arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive and you don't have to be afraid.
Welcome to the Bassline. Cece Blakeman is a songwriter, a podcast host, and my co-host on our Stop the Shots nightly spaces on X. She is a medical freedom activist par excellence. It is with great delight that I introduce to you the audience, my friend, the talented and vivacious Cece Blakeman. How are you today, Cece?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm so glad you're joining me. So, first of all, everyone, you guys might remember, hopefully you were tuning in and you heard this incredible song that was written in dedication to me in my effort hosting the Stop the Shots nightly spaces. And my guest today is the author of that song. She is a songwriter who just channels just lyrics so easily and naturally. And she wrote that song, which was incredibly flattering for me, but also very motivating and inspiring, and reminded me of the power of what I love to do as well, which is make music. So it's really awesome for me to have that song written for me, to share it with the Baseline audience, and then to have the writer of that song joining me shortly thereafter. And Cece is just a really cool person. We become friends pretty quickly and pretty easily because we're both so dedicated to medical freedom. She's jumped right into the Stop the Shots nightly sessions, and I've had her as my co-host for the past several episodes at this point because we flow together really nicely in terms of hosting the show, and we're both in total accord in terms of just how serious all of this is, in terms of the violation of our rights, in terms of the harm that's been done to people, in terms of the concern for future generations and what kind of world they're inheriting. So I just want to say that it's really awesome to have Cece on board with invited these great guests that have been featured guests to educate our own. And she has an incredible podcast, which she's going to tell you later, the American Granddaughter Podcast. And we're of the mindset here. We're not in competition. We're collaborators, even though we both have our own shows. American Granddaughter is something I would love for you guys to listen to because yeah, it's a continuation of the medical freedom conversation, and I think that's the most important conversation we can have, because I've always been a human rights activist, but I didn't realize until these tragic events that body sovereignty, the basic act of the sovereignty and right to one's own body is fundamental. It emanates from there. We can't get into complicated legal and philosophical stuff without addressing that initial act of the right to defend oneself, and so importantly, which I've emphasized over and over again, the right to say no without being challenged, without being undermined for saying no, just saying no and having that respected. And not no meaning anything that would harm or affect someone else. No as it pertains to yourself, your own physical integrity, your own sense of safety, and what feels right for you. So let me ask you, Cece, thank you so much for being here. What would you give yourself on your COVID report card in terms of how quickly did you adapt to the fact that something was amiss? I mean, I myself, like I say, I'll give myself a B. I don't really want to give myself a B plus. I don't think I quite deserve it. I think I'd be maybe too critical to give myself a B minus. I'll give myself a regular old B in terms of I went along, I wore a mask a little bit because I'm thinking, oh, does this really work? But I just don't want to be inconsiderate to people. I want to just, there's a public health issue. I just want to be considerate and responsible. But I started questioning things and looking into things and noticing things were, amiss, things were awry pretty early on. And then I just, I became a COVIDian, so to speak, as opposed to the opposite team, which are the branch COVIDians. But how quick was your learning curve, Cece?
I'd probably say I was a strong A. I mean, we had to wear a mask. It was mandated just for a short time in Texas, so I didn't have a choice on some. But I knew right away that there was something fishy, um, because I had gone through personal tragedies myself. I was determined to find a treatment that would save myself and my family and my loved ones. So, right when this whole thing was announced, I started just researching protocols of other countries around the world. And what I stumbled on really fast was there were countries that were using certain drugs and they were working. So, but they were being censored or denied to our citizens here. And so I started blogging about that, and I flew to Mexico and bought up all the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine I could get my hands on, and made little envelopes for everybody in my family and my friends with the FLCCC's protocol in case they came down with it. And December 2020, I'll never forget, I woke up with no taste or smell and feeling achy, and I immediately just took one ivermectin, one hydroxychloroquine that I had already had in my home, and I had COVID symptoms for 3 hours. And that at that moment, I knew that they were killing people, because these 40-year-old drugs, that won the Nobel Peace Prize and were completely safe, were used with children, with scabies, with lice, were completely being called horse paste. And I mean, the whole mask thing didn't make sense. I mean, we're talking about a virus so small, it's going to go through fabric or on the sides. And it just, the whole thing was just fishy to me. I didn't buy into it. So one of my blogs reached a former federal prosecutor up in New Jersey, and he contacted me to be on a call because he was suing Facebook for censorship of early treatments, and wanted my opinion because he saw that all the research I'd done. I mean, these blogs were like 14 pages long, and they were just straight facts about what protocols different countries were using. I mean, for example, Uttar Pradesh was using ivermectin, zinc, and deoxycycline, and they were clearing out their hospitals in a week. And here we are, not even allowed to use it. And ivermectin is on the list of essential medications. That means it needs to be readily available for any off-label use at all times. And all of a sudden, it wasn't. And so I don't really buy in. I've always been skeptical of government. I've blogged about government corruption since 2016. And so I'd give myself a strong A to answer your question. I didn't
Yeah,
buy it.
I think you sound like an A to me as well. I think it's deserved. Um, so let's talk about your well, first of all, because you mentioned family and friends, and I know that this is something in general just affected a lot of relationships for some strange reason. I mean, who would have thought something pertaining to a medical intervention would be like this big dividing line in the whole society at a certain strange point in history? But just give us a quick uh, overview of how it maybe just affected your relations. How were you
Yeah.
received by your family and friends about your hyper vigilant awareness in a good sense? There was a lot of hyper vigilance on the branch Covidian side, but it sounds like you were hyper vigilant for the good guys in terms of trying to alert people to what was going on. How were you received?
Oh, well, they thought I was crazy. It caused a lot of division in my family in the beginning. It's still kind of a touchy subject. You know, people are so easily believe the propaganda on the media, and the fear campaign that they just put out to scare people into getting the jabs was just, I mean, to me, it was just so obvious. You're bribing people with a burger and fries or donut. I mean, if their vaccines work so well, then why do you have to bribe people with silly stuff like that?
Yeah.
But everybody couldn't wait to be first in line, my mom included. And I begged and pleaded, and she was like, "You're not a doctor." And I'm like, "No, but I can think and I can read and I can
Yeah.
research." And I have my critical thinking skills, and I've done, she saw me obsessively researching for these articles. And so, one Christmas, we're a very close family. One Christmas, we had a very intense argument that I wasn't going to come over for Christmas if I didn't wear a mask. And I've spent Christmas with my family for 54 years, and it was traumatizing. I mean, I've never fought with my family like I did over the vaccine and the treatments. I begged them not to go to hospitals if they got it, but they did come down with it before they got the jab, and I forced them to take the ivermectin, and my stepdad was like, she may be right, I feel better. I'm like, but then they still went and got the vaccine. So did my sister, and they're both, my mom and stepdad and my sister, all injured from it. So now it's a touchy subject about, like, she was right. They don't want to admit it, and I don't want to rub it in their face. But they've also had COVID, I think, 3 or 4 times a piece since the jab, and I haven't ever had it again. But I had it for 3 hours in 2020. And I'm around, people come to me all the time when they have COVID, because they know that I know what to do. And I've helped probably over 600 people get better within 24 hours. It's been so criminal, but so amazing that they could literally say there was no working treatment, so they could pass the EUA on the vaccine when there is completely a working treatment. And,
Yeah.
thousands of people know that, but many more don't. And it's because of the censorship and the propaganda.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple thing to explain. It's kind of sad that so many people didn't manage to that basic mechanism of they suppressed effective treatments so they could grant themselves the power and eat or do things that you normally would not be allowed to do. It just blows me away that I call them the formerly astute people who I knew who were critical thinkers about everything up until this point. And then this event happened and they just took the thinking cap just directly off of their head and said, no, I don't think anymore. And got really upset at you or me for explaining just kind of basic things that aren't like incredibly complicated, like what I was just saying about, the powers they're granting themselves through having an EUA, emergency use authorization.
Yeah. And, one thing I've noticed along the way is a lot of people that are in this fight had some previous traumatizing event happen. For me, it was losing my daughter. Our founder, he was at 9/11. One of our attorneys, he was at the Vegas shooting. And I think that heightened our skepticism and our awareness and our ability to think critically, because we didn't want to experience another trauma, and we didn't believe everything. I really think it was a sign maybe from my daughter saying don't buy into it. And our founder, Brad Geyer, had already been in 9/11 and gone through that whole, he had PTSD from that. So did one of the attorneys. And I've met a lot of people that are in this fight when they weren't personally affected, because they'd had something in their life that motivated them to help others and not experience that pain again. So I know that was one of my motivating, because I knew how these victims were feeling. I'd experienced it myself, and helping others helps you. And it's just a type of grief that's sudden, that it's different than your great grandfather or your grandfather dying from cancer, or even a car accident. It's just because it was medical murder on the jabs and the protocols. And it's the need for justice is detrimental for these people to be able to heal. And justice means something different for everybody. It could be money, it could be just being able to shout your story from the rooftop, it could be perp walks, and people arrested. It just depends on where you're at in your life, and what you need and what you consider justice. And for me, I want my victims to be able to get it in any way they can, but I want to see these people held accountable criminally.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, seriously. It's it's a matter of the abuse of power. And, I use the example of myself as a chess teacher, as a simple example of power relations. It's like I'm a chess teacher. I get put in classrooms with sometimes fairly large numbers of kids. I was teaching chess as I do every day. I was teaching chess this afternoon, and there's a bunch of kids, over a dozen, less than 20, over a dozen, kind of unruly kids a little bit rowdy. I wish I didn't have to ask them to quiet down so much. I wish I didn't have to stop so many times to ask them for their attention. Now, I'm responsible for those kids. I have not met all of their parents. I have not shaken every father and mother's hand and explained to them who I am. I'm put in this environment and I'm trusted to be the chess teacher. Now, I'm responsible for the safety of my class. I can't let anything just occur in my class. But likewise, I can't lock the doors of my classroom and start abusing people. And then when you catch me, say, well, that's just how I conduct my chess class.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's a limit. There have to be
Right.
clear limits. I have to have power and authority. I can't let kids fight each other, or
Right.
I can't have someone get hurt and not be responsible for the care and the safety of my students. But there's not unlimited power that I've been granted. That's not realistic at all, right? My power has to be very limited. I'm the chess teacher. I'm
Mhm.
responsible for the basic functioning of this group, and that's it. But here we have the situation where, oh, it's an emergency. And, powerful people, the powers that be, if you will, they seem to have a penchant for situations where they can get people to say yes, where you would normally say no. That seems to be almost their favorite scenario, is these crazy situations where you can get people to say yes, where normally the answer would be no. But I want to ask you about an organization that I know you have contributed to greatly and have been involved with quite a bit. Former Feds. Tell us about what Former Feds is all about and your
Yeah.
involvement.
Former Feds Group Freedom Foundation is a nonprofit based out of New Jersey, and it was started by a former federal prosecutor of 21 years that worked, with the DOJ and FBI. And he saw the corruption in government and got out in 2012, formed former Feds Group Freedom Foundation in 2016. And they were doing mostly humanitarian projects around the world, a lot in Vietnam and other countries. But when the COVID thing unrolled itself, he said, we're turning our entire focus to crimes against humanity, because that's what these are. They're medical murders and government psyops, really. And when I met him in 2021, the very beginning of 2021, because of my article had reached him in New Jersey, and he asked me to come on as to be a content writer. And this is right in the beginning of when we started just focusing on the COVID situation. And soon that morphed into me helping start the COVID-19 Humanity Betrayal Memory Project, which is a large searchable database that houses thousands of stories and video testimonies of hospital murder and vaccine injuries or deaths. And we are trying to preserve the historical record, because otherwise they're going to memory hole all this. They're going to take it off. Medical records are already disappearing, and these people need to be honored and remembered. And we need to have the evidence for authors and attorneys and historians and doctors to go back and look at these cases. And in each case, we have all the details of what happened: a written account, a video testimony, firsthand, of the probably most of them are widows, their husband. That our demographics seem to be, they killed mostly healthy men, this is special needs and disabled, and the elderly. The elderly, they can just say, oh, they just died because it was COVID, and they would have died from anything. Special needs and
Mhm.
disabled, you've heard those horrific people say they're useless eaters, and these are beautiful people. But they want to, depopulate us, but take out certain groups more according to our data. And we just have a small, couple thousand right now documented, but it's over 55% is healthy men. And that's I don't think that's a coincidence. And what you get left with is depressed single moms now that are dependent on the government. They're trying to get control. So it's been very hard listening to these stories, and I've been sticking by these victims for 4.5 years, and they're grieving so hard, but they're fighting back just as hard. And we started 13 support group meetings a week because we need to keep these people strong and know that they're not alone. The legal process is long and hard and stressful, and some of them choose to get in it, some of them don't, but they still need the support. So it's been very rewarding. I mean, we went from 6 people to thousands of people that are, volunteering for our organization, and very, very active in helping stop all this. We've just added new projects. I think like every 3 months we have a new project, and it's just people step up, and that's what they got to do, because we got to educate the rest of the country, or this is going to happen again, and we're going to lose all of rights. I don't know how our government could make a agreement with an industry and that be not unconstitutional, and that's exactly what they did with the PrEP Act. So
seriously,
that needs to be challenged on its constitutionality itself, because that's what's keeping people from getting justice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what happened, right? The government colluded with an industry to violate our rights. And for people to fail to understand that, to not understand the seriousness of that, I am amazed by this every day. The failure of people to understand the magnitude of what had transpired through all of this. Speaking of, letting the public know, take your time in explaining just what you have witnessed and experienced in terms of vaccine injury. I mean, I know, honestly, you could go on for hours, I'm sure, past the time restriction of this particular program, but give us an overview in terms of what you've seen in your everyday life, and just how you would go about describing this to people who are apparently not awake to the injury that's going on. I mean, I really remain amazed at the people as well. Like I said, I'm amazed at people not understanding the magnitude of this, but I'm also amazed at people not noticing the unbelievable levels of sudden death, the just various changes. Like, for example, I brought up on this program before, actually it was first introduced by author and Professor Mark Crispin Miller, who maintains a great Substack that I insist everybody subscribe to. Mark Crispin Miller's News from Underground on Substack. He's keeping track of the sudden deaths and all this strange, all these strange things that are being reported every day. Young people dying of cancer, people passing out on the soccer field, people passing out on live broadcasts, tours being canceled, strange sicknesses that people are succumbing to. All these, the vast array of things that we're seeing in terms of harm and injury. It's amazing to me that some people are either actually unaware or pretending to be unaware that something is wrong. I've said that before. You can't wake someone up who's pretending to be asleep. And it's really hard for me to tell who's sleeping and who's pretending at this point. But what would you explain in terms of what you've witnessed and what you've experienced in your family, in your broader circles? And if someone said, well, what do you mean the vaccine is harming people? I don't think that that's true. What would you explain to that person?
Well, I really encourage your listeners to never take another vaccine, so-called vaccine again. First of all, the COVID so-called vaccine is not a vaccine. It does not stop transmission. It does not stop you from getting the virus. In fact, it's going to create you to get the virus more easily and more often, because it's a gene therapy, but it's a messenger RNA, which tells your body to make the dangerous part of the virus, which is the spike protein. But the problem is there's no off switch. And the injuries have been horrific. And the death number is, people still listen to the media and celebrities and their doctors who are all still encouraging this. And it's hard. I think it's a hard psychological barrier to cross for people to accept that they've been lied to, they've been betrayed by their people they trust, by their doctors, by their news anchors, by their movie stars that they like, by their government. But the fact of the matter is, you need to take a big swallow and realize this is true. They are harming us, and these so-called vaccines are deadly. So many people are dropping dead, but you don't really see them reported unless you follow independent media. And that's why programs like yours is so important. They still, turn on CNN and just believe what the propaganda that's pushed out. So, I think our effort to educate the public on the dangers of this vaccine is just of utmost importance, because we're talking about heart conditions, neurological conditions, neuropathy, mold growing in their bodies. I mean, detached retinas, you name it. It's attacking every organ. Reproduction, women aren't having their periods anymore. Miscarriages, stillbirths are skyrocketed. Renal failure is probably one of the biggest ones. There's just, I know one of our victims has 31 new diseases or illnesses or symptoms now, and she was completely healthy before. In fact, she runs our vaccine injured support group, which is up to about 4,400, and 30 of those people have killed themselves in the last 6 months. So this is really a serious situation. They are not getting the help they need. The doctors are telling them they're crazy, or it's menopause, or it's a mental issue. When you can't feel your feet, that's not a mental issue. I mean, when your heart is enlarged and you drop dead, on the basketball court, that's not a mental issue. And because these doctors pushed the shot, they're never going to admit that maybe they were wrong, because they bought into it as well. And I really commend the doctors and the nurses that have come forward and said, no, wait, these aren't working. These are killing people. I'm not going to do this anymore, because they put everything on the line. And we have a lot of brave doctors and nurses that have done that, but not enough, because by now there's too much evidence. I mean, VAERS on itself, which is severely underreported, has over 40,000 deaths. I mean, any other medication or so-called vaccine would have been pulled by now, or should have been pulled by now. But if that's not enough, to make someone think twice about getting it, when they know that they've, even getting the boosters, when they know they've gotten COVID afterwards, their first one, and then, what are we up to, like 6 boosters now? Why do we need 6 boosters? And why do
I think it's more like 8, actually.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And these gene therapies, they were grown in big vats of E. coli in plasmids, which has fragmented DNA in them. They have 2 antibiotic resistant strains. So if you come down with something like tuberculosis, and they've got a antibiotic resistant strain to kanamycin, which is used to treat tuberculosis. So now that won't work on you. And that's just another, I mean, this whole thing was very well planned out, and they covered all their bases, and we got to catch up to them. And do not get another shot, any injection of any kind. They're just, I got vaccinated as a child, and we only had like 6 maybe. And now it's up to like 80 for children. I mean, it's completely insane. And you can take a control group like the Amish who don't vaccinate, and they don't have all these childhood conditions that we have, like autism or ADHD, just something, that they can treat with a medication. And that's what big pharma, as I call them, is doing. They don't create cures, they create customers. And it's just one thing so they can give you another medication to create another symptom, so they can give you another medication. I mean, it's insane. And I like what Dr. Marble calls them, the poison pushers, because that's what they are. I'm a Christian, and I think that God gave us everything on this planet that we need to keep ourselves alive and thriving. And I'd like to see this movement towards holistic treatments. And I think we're seeing that now with the MAHA movement. But yeah, the shots are not good. They don't work. And Operation Warp Speed, was a failure. And I mean, I'm a Trump supporter, but he needs to get out in front of this and say I was wrong, and get us that we're diehard Trumpers, get our faith back in, whether it was just bad advice he got or he wanted to look like the hero. It doesn't matter. Pull these shots, stop the shots, like our space. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, and a really important concept, which I think should apply to all pharmaceutical products, but something I became aware of along with so many other things I became aware of through all this, but the concept of all-cause mortality. So, for example, someone might commit suicide, and you could say, well, was that shot related? And someone might think, oh, that's so crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist, whatever. You're so crazy and obsessed with the vaccines and everything that you would make such a crazy statement. But the fact of the matter is, well, psychosis and various mental disorders are reported in the vaccine adverse event reporting system. That may well, and I'm no doctor, but I think I might be onto something when I say that might have something to do with all the thrombosis, which appears to be associated with the lipid nanoparticle in particular. So, it's a type of thing where I agree with the statement that I know Peter McCullough has stated and others at this point, saying it's the vaccine until proven otherwise. You have a healthy person who was living a productive life, they committed suicide. May have been the vaccine. You might think it's crazy, but they took a vaccine and now they killed themselves, and there was no indication they were going to do so beforehand. Same thing with, for example, someone could just fall off of a step ladder and say, oh my God, it's so crazy that you'll blame the vaccine. They lost their balance because they've been having balance issues since their vaccine. Someone crashes a car. Oh, it was just a car accident. No, they blacked out behind the wheel, which they had done a few times since their vaccine. Hence the concept and the need for the concept of all-cause mortality, because that's the real metric where we look at, okay, here are all these folks over here, they didn't take a particular intervention, and these other folks over here, they did have more car accidents. They did have more accidents in general. They did have more psychosis and mental health problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, they sort of trick everyone by narrowing in on a particular focus of how many antibodies did you create? Oh, we made the antibodies, that's it, we achieved our goal or whatever it is, and not really being able to prove, well, does this help me live longer? Because that's the only reason why I would take a medical intervention, so I could live longer. I don't want to not die of COVID, but I die of something else from the thing that prevented me of dying from COVID, right? So it's just a lot, they've just gotten in us as a society, and you can realize now how well we had been groomed. So much came down on us like a ton of bricks through COVID. But if you think back on it, we had been getting groomed up until this point. For example, all the side effects that they list on medical products that they promote on television, they can tell you this range of side effects as though it's acceptable to expose yourself to such things, like as though we're all willing to gamble with our lives.
And people do. I mean, they spend 30
do.
seconds telling you what it's going to do for you that you want it to do, and 30 seconds equal amount telling you what it's going to do that you don't want it to do. Yet people still run out and get on those drugs, and without any other kind of research, just because the doctors, told them to, and the doctors were told to by a pharmaceutical salesperson who are just trying to sell their drug. And we all know how much on patent drugs are. I mean, remdesivir was used in the hospital. It's deadly. It failed the Ebola study and had to be pulled because it killed 54% of the people. And it's $3,500 a dose. But yet they wouldn't give something that was, a quarter, like ivermectin, because it was off patent. And it's ridiculous. And, there's a lot of pharmaceutical drugs out there that a side effect is suicide. So it's not, beneath them to include that in something. And we don't know the extent of damage. And they say, well, if it didn't happen within, a week or 3 weeks of your shot, then it's not COVID jab related. Well, we're seeing the effects of this start spilling out, 4.5 years later. People are dropping dead. they don't know because there's been no long-term studies because of Operation Warp Speed. I mean, usually it takes 10 to 15 years to come up with a vaccine and all the trial data and studies that needed to be done. We know so many people that entered the first phase trials and were either killed or severely injured, like little Maddie DeGarry and Brianne Dressing, and a lot of them. That's just, it should have been immediately pulled. It should have never
You
gotten,
know,
mRNA should have never been used on the public, and it should not be going in our food like it is now either.
not at all. I mean, yeah, the mRNA platform should absolutely be banned. It doesn't make sense on paper. I mean, I'm no scientist, I'm no doctor, whatever. I don't care. That does not make sense on paper. You do not want your body suddenly being programmed to do things it was not naturally evolved to do. I mean, come on, the human body is a pretty magnificent thing, and it should pretty much be left to its own devices. Programming the cells to produce foreign proteins. I mean, who on earth thinks that that's a good idea?
I
But then
don't
to
know.
go and take it to the next level, to gaslight people and act like you're crazy to not want to be a part of such an experiment. I mean, oh my goodness, how could they achieve that? I mean, I remember people who have no background in science whatsoever saying, follow the science, mRNA is fine. They've been working on it for years. It's like, are you dumb? I mean, why would you sign up for something when they describe to you this process of the body and being induced to produce foreign proteins? Because it doesn't make sense on paper, doesn't make sense.
And they completely just left out the fact of you have natural immunity. They're telling people to get the shot while they have COVID or after, and
Right.
completely just like natural immunity never existed. It's
Right. And that was another weird one in terms of the whole point, very basically, the point of a so-called vaccine is to prepare the body for a confrontation with a pathogen it's never encountered. Why would you go and vaccinate someone for something they just had? There was no documentation to support that practice, and they still mandated people who had COVID, who were documented as having COVID, said, no, you have to take a vaccine for something you just had, even though we can't produce one single scientific document explaining why you would do such a thing.
Nope. I mean, I was growing up, we used to have chickenpox parties because all of our parents wanted us to get the chickenpox to get it over with, expose ourselves so we wouldn't have, get it later on because it's worse as you get older. But now, we're trying to vaccinate children with this deadly mRNA platform when really they're our first line of defense against this virus. I mean, the kids don't die from it. My nephew was so angry at my sister because he couldn't go to baseball practice when he had it because he felt fine, but just a little bit, had a little cough the first day, and the doctor was like, keep him home, and here's some Paxlovid, and I'm like, over my dead body, you're gonna get any body Paxlovid, remdesivir, baricitinib, all the nibs and the nabs, they're all bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently Paxlovid is quite toxic from what I've heard, and it's a powerful antiviral, which just is a total indictment of their so-called vaccines, because why would you need to take a powerful medication to fight off what you had already been vaccinated against, and you're wearing a mask? So it's like you need your vaccine, you need your Paxlovid, you need your mask. It's like, yeah.
And if you're vaccinated and don't come around me if you're unvaccinated because you're a danger to me, which makes no logical sense at all. I mean, if your vaccine works, then act like it. Why am I a danger to you? You're protected, right? They don't, it just, the dots aren't connecting for people because of the
Yeah.
fear and the propaganda and just the lies. I mean, there's no way that people haven't thought of that are on our news, and people need to turn off the television. There's a reason it's called programming, because that's what they're doing to you. Turn it
Yeah,
off.
seriously. Yeah, I forget what the word was that I was talking to a neighbor friend of mine who understood well. conditioned. People have been trained, and he corrected me, programmed. They've been programmed to behave like this. And it rang like a bell when he said it, because yeah, it is almost more like a computer. Training implies more of a sort of a continued effort, whereas programmed, it is sort of a more accurate word. It's almost like it was just inserted right in the behavior. Just press the button, download, and new behavior is here. It
Yeah.
wasn't so much of a training process. It was just more of a direct download and then this programmed behavior.
Operation
So
Mockingbird. That's what
yeah,
it is.
yeah. So it's unbelievable. That's why we're continuing to discuss this. And frankly, many people are continuing to discuss this. Of course, that's the focus of the Bassline radio program, but there are conferences about this. People continue to write books about this. There are documentaries. There are people every day trying to figure out solutions to all the various problems that we face now as a result of this, whether you want to call it transhumanist agenda, biosecurity agenda, vaccination agenda, all of the above, et cetera, et cetera. But on that note, I would love, Cece, if you could take the time to do what I've done already, but I will continue to uh, invite people to our community, the Stop the Shots community. So you've been very instrumental recently in helping the group grow. You've been bringing guests in. You've been my co-host. What would you say to my audience in terms of the need for our community, and how would you go about inviting people to our wonderful Stop the Shots community?
Yeah, this is just a really important group. I mean, this is more than just a space. This is a movement, because this is a civil rights issue. I mean, our rights have been completely stomped on as Americans, and mandated, or get fired, or get your license stripped if you don't go along with their agenda. And Stop the Shots is so important. And as a community, we have to educate. It's our responsibility to look out for our fellow human beings. And we need to grow this community so it is a big movement and people are aware. And if you're not on X, just open an account just for that. You don't have to post stuff or read on, just come to the group, just be a member of the community so we can grow. And once we have the numbers up there, then we'll start getting media attention, and more people will hear about it, because more people will be talking about it, at the grocery store with their families. So I like to have, special guests on that are experts, but I also like the victims to be able to tell their stories. I think it's really important that they get to share what they're going through, because they need the support. So I like how we have a nice mixture of experts, saying what they're doing, coming up with solutions. I like it to be more solution based than just, a big time to complain, because that time is we have complained for a long time, and now we need action. So yeah, I encourage everybody to come and join that community. You can find it at the top of the X app. It says Stop the Shots, and you can click right there. It says join, and come listen in. I think you'll learn something. I've been in this 4.5 years, and I still learn stuff every night. So we've got people from all over the world on there. And you can hear how different countries are handling this and treating their victims. And it's terrifying, but necessary, and also inspirational sometimes, when you hear the Warner Mendenhalls of the world get on there and talk to our group. Just a powerhouse attorney that is fighting these mandates and these jab injured. And he's just dynamic and amazing. And we have a lot of those, but we don't have enough. The attorneys and the doctors need to find some moral courage to come forward and join our community too, because this is a movement. And I've enjoyed hosting it with you, co-hosting it with you. And I like to see it grow, and I think it will. We just got to keep sharing. If you are a member, repost the link to join it every night. Take 5 minutes of your day to share the link to the space. And if nothing else, do that.
It's really,
People are going to keep dying.
yeah. And, I want to say we've had some great guests recently. We've had folks who have done some featured presentations, so that kind of helps to organize a discussion because they make a very clear, cogent presentation. And then after listening to that, we have something very specific to ask questions about, to react to. And last night we had the incredible, the incomparable Dr. Leonard Horowitz in the space. He was talking about the injections, he was talking about the history of biowarfare, he was talking about the special healing powers of the 528 frequency, which he's a scholar, leading scholar on that subject. And, that was incredible. We had a nice, really nice group to receive Dr. Horowitz last night. But as you mentioned, we had Warner Mendenhall recently, who was giving us a firsthand update about all the COVID litigation that he's involved with that's going around the country. So we have some really good guests in there that are really worth the price of admission alone. But then you also get a chance to hear from the vaccine injured on a regular basis, which gets pretty emotional at times because sometimes these folks, they're really hurt. They're angry, they're saddened, they're furious, they're going through the mood swings of being in so much pain, of feeling the injustice that's been inflicted upon them. So that can be difficult, but those folks as well need support. So, we can lend a word of support to people who are really suffering right now. And, if you are a person who's a good person in terms of outreach, that alone, join our group and help us with the outreach of growing this steadily growing, but not growing fast enough for my taste group,
Yeah.
because we are steadily and slowly growing, but we need some go-getters to join our group to just start spreading the word around. And maybe you're not a lawyer who's going to do something particularly on the legal front, and maybe you're not a doctor who's going to do something particularly on the medical front. But just by simply joining our group, first of all, and then reaching out to other people and saying, hey, I'd like you to join this group, you can help create a platform that supports the doctors and supports the lawyers who are at the forefront. So that if, heck, there's a major legal case, maybe we need people rallying outside of the courtroom or whatever, but we'll have a community that's large enough to spread the word and make that kind of thing happen. And like you said, it's global. So we're hearing firsthand accounts from every continent, literally, except for Antarctica.
Yeah, it's true. And, some countries are worse than others, but it's still, they're all pushing this dangerous jab. And, now it's approved for children and pregnant women. We have a case right now against ABC because they had a fictional show like The Love Boat, and they were giving COVID vaccines to pregnant women on the show. Now, if you're a pregnant woman,
Wow.
or even, a young woman that doesn't follow the politics or this kind of news, or, you watch TikTok and Wheel of Fortune instead of read what's going on of Substacks, then you might think that you need to run out and get the COVID jab. And then the chance of you having a miscarriage or a stillbirth are very high. Dr. James Thorpe just wrote a really great book on the dangers of that, called Sacrifice. And you're talking about Dr. Horowitz. He has a really good book called Rise of the Fourth Reich. That was one of the first books I read. And it's terrifying. I mean, we have to wake up each other. And if you haven't been personally affected, you still could be. Now, the shedding from the vaccine, and you don't know who of your friends or your family may just, come down with a sudden turbo cancer, or even worse, die from a blood clot or pulmonary embolism. So it's, we have to stand up now as a society, because that's how change happens. And we can't trust our government to make the changes necessary, because they're the ones that started this. So it's got to be the people that rise up. And, that's how, movements are created. And this is our time. We're put here for this time. And, if my grandfather can fight World War II in a tin can of an airplane after 7 weeks of flight school at 19 years old, then I can sit at my computer with my time and my words and try to fight this. Because make no mistake, we're at war as well. It's just a spiritual and propaganda war, but it's a war for humanity, and everybody has an obligation to help save our
I
country and
agree.
save our
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, we are in total accord on that, and that's why we're co-hosts, and that's why we become friends, and that we're working on this stuff together, because I feel the exact same way. This is a war for the human race at this point. I mean, they have expressed a willingness to mutate us, to murder us, to experiment on us, to injure our children. I mean, there's nothing more that they could do, frankly, to show you that these are people who will, you know, destroy and kill and commit evil without any remorse of conscience whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So we're near the end of our program here, but I would love if you took your time because sorry, those are the sounds of New York in the background. But yeah, if you could tell us about the American Granddaughter okay. The American Granddaughter Podcast. Tell us about some of the people you've interviewed, where people can listen to this program and hear previous episodes.
Yeah, that's my podcast I started a while back. I have a lot of experts on. Dr. Thorpe's been on, Dr. Biss, um, Dr. Jancy Lindsay, Dr. Judy Mikovits, lots of doctors, scientists, attorneys. But I also do a lot of interviews with victims themselves. I do a lot of roundtables. Well, I'll get, a group of victims and I'll ask a question and we'll go around the table. Excuse me. And I think people need to see the human side of this. We hear a lot from the experts on podcasts and on independent media and their books, but we need to hear from the people that these shots or these protocols actually harmed, because that's where you touch people's hearts and they get inspired to get involved. And so most of mine, I would say, have to do with the victims themselves, and they're just gut wrenching. One of the most popular ones I did, I had an attorney, a doctor, a researcher, and a victim on, and it was just flowed perfectly because the victim spoke about how she lost her 36-year-old healthy daughter to the protocol. Then came in the researcher, John Bodwin, backing her everything she said that happened to her up with what he's done with his research in his book, The Real CDC, talking about the stats. Then we had Dr. Judy Mikovits come right behind him and talk about the history of this. And then an attorney talking about the cases, and it just all tied it together real nicely. And it was a really good podcast because you got the experts and the humanity side of the story. And Dr. Mikovits and I and the attorney, we were all in tears, and John was borderline. And that's what I think it needs to happen to reach other humans' hearts, to want, to get them to get involved. Because at this point, silence is complicity. I mean, if you know something and you don't speak up, then you've got blood on your hands as far as I'm concerned. Sharing is not caring, as I keep saying, because if you share what you know, then you care about, your neighbor that doesn't know. And it's our responsibility to do that right now. So yeah, the American Granddaughter, it's inspired by my grandfather. Like I said, he was a World War II fighter pilot. He was always skeptical of the government. I mean, I remember as a little girl running around his house, and as he's walking, pacing the floor, listening to the president talk and cussing at the TV and everything, because he was fed up with, government overreach and corruption even back then. But he also was very patriotic, and he taught me what it means to be an American. And I think a lot of parents have failed to do that. And so, you have this generation coming up that doesn't realize the privilege we have to live in this country, and we're going to lose it if they don't realize that pretty quick. And a lot of people sacrifice their lives for us to be free and to have this country, and we're just giving all of our freedoms away to industries. I mean, Big Pharma is the richest industry in the world, and they control everything. They control our, our politicians are bought off, our doctors are bought off, our media is bought off. It's just, they need to be taken down quite a few notches.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, I want to, before I end this episode, I want to remind everyone, announce once again that there's going to be another 528 frequency jam here in Harlem on April 27th. That's on a Sunday, the last Sunday of April. But if you're in or around the New York City area, please come to this event. It's really a lot of fun. It's going to be a good old time. We have some good musicians playing. I'm going to be improvising and playing, and I'll be on my six string bass. I have my friend Kevin Nathaniel, great and be a player and percussionist, and we're going to have some other special guests sitting in and joining us. And we would love to see you there. It's at a place called Rock Mill, which is a really cool venue in Harlem. The address is 274 Lenox Avenue. So if you take the 2 or the 3 train to 125th Street, you barely walk down the block and you're right there at Rock Mill. You don't need to go uh, far at all. So just take the 2 or the 3 to 125th Street. It's 3:30 p.m., so it's like a afternoon type of thing, not too late because people have to work on Monday. So the music will end by about 6 p.m., giving you plenty of time to get home. It's only $10 suggested donation, very modest. Please join us and soak up some of that healing energy from the 528 frequency, which the more I learn about it, the more I'm a believer that it is the correct tuning of music. And also, of course, support my Substack. Please go to Substack and look for Jeremiah Hosea. I've written, I'm not sure how many, I'm about to publish my 28th article in the next few days. And your support over there is greatly appreciated. Just broke 2,000 subscribers. If you've been listening to this program, you haven't gotten around to subscribing to my Substack, please take the time to do so. It's actually really easy. If you click on any one of my articles, you just enter your email and you're subscribed. That's it. One step process. So it's not like you're giving personal information and filling out pages of application type of stuff. It's nothing like that. Just enter your email, you're subscribed, and I just pretty much send one, maybe two. Last month I had 3 articles that I released in a month, which was my personal record. I'm not going to be spamming you, and you're not going to be getting tons of messages from me every day. Every time I have a thought, I have to write a whole article and then I produce it and send it to you, and that will show up in your inbox once a month approximately. So please subscribe to my Substack. JeremiahHosea.com is where you could hear my music. You could buy the theme song to this show, Love's the Highest Truth. And of course, RemoteLearningChess.com is also my company. If you haven't learned how to play chess, please allow me to teach you. If there's a young person in your family who might be interested in chess lessons, you get a Bassline discount automatically as a listener of this program. So please support my business. Chess is just a wonderful game, and unless you've been introduced to it, you wouldn't quite be able to appreciate that. The vocabulary, the history, the spatio-temporal intelligence, there's so many benefits to the game. So please consider that if you haven't already, remotelearningchess.com. And you can just reach me at Jeremiah Hosea at Gmail, JeremiahHosea at Gmail, to discuss any of these matters. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back next week with another outstanding guest. And thank you so much, CC Blakeman. Thank you for being such a great co-host. Thank you for your commitment to the medical freedom movement and all the great things that you're doing on a daily basis to keep spreading the truth.
Thank you for having me. What you're doing is incredible, and I commend you for doing all the things. I mean, music is such a great way to reach people. We have to get creative on how we get this message through, and nothing better than music and the arts to help that.
I agree. Thank you so much. See you tonight on Stop the Shots.
Every night you'll find a diverse community, all standing for freedom and unity. Led by Jeremiah, such a determined man that cares about people and takes a stand. He is a father, musician, and teaches chess, as well as writes a Substack that will impress.